So, one of the most obvious ways that everybody thinks of immediately is paying for apps up front. Now, paid apps are really easy to implement, and essentially, it's when you list your app onto either the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store, you essentially just set a price tier. And those tiers are determined by the app stores themselves. So, as a new developer, it's very easy to assume that this is, the way that you should go. And the reason for that is mostly guided by results on the App Store that you see. For example, this is an app called Fitman Cook that was developed by some friends of ours. And it essentially features a whole bunch of healthy recipes by a blogger called Kevin Curry. So they basically launched onto the App Store, and within the first day, they hit the number 2 spot in the top paid iPhone apps with a pricing model of $299. They were wedged between Monument Valley and Minecraft. So you can see that these people did really, really well off this app, essentially. And you can mistakenly think like, oh, so, that's how I should monetize. I should just price it at $299 and put my app onto the App Store and it will perform equally well. But the thing that you don't realize is that there's a number of behind the scenes factors that determined this success. Not only the fact that it was a great app, but also a number of factors that related to how they went about promoting it. So the biggest factor in that is the guy Kevin Curry, who I think got 50% of the revenue of the app without really contributing to the development of it other than his recipes. But he has a huge following. He has a blog with tens of thousands of subscribers, a Twitter page with, 20K followers, and a Facebook page with, again, hundreds of thousands of people who like it. So what that means is that this guy is a serious influencer in this field. And on the day of launch, or even prior to launch, he can gear up his subscribers, his followers, his fans to download this app within the first 24 hours. The thing you have to realize is that on both the Google App Store as well as the Apple App Store, the first 24 hours, 7 days, and 30 days of your app's performance is crucial to getting it featured or getting it highlighted in some sort of ranking. So if you're able to achieve a massive amount of downloads on day one within the first 24 hours, that sends a huge spike and a signal to the app stores, potentially furthering your exposure by featuring it somewhere or getting it listed in the top paid apps. So that sort of starts a snowball effect that gets you more and more downloads and sustains you within the rankings. So this is one way in which paid apps can work really well. If you find that you can partner with an influencer in a particular niche that applies to your app, and even if they don't do anything at all for the development of your app, if they can bring the people from day one, then it's well worth going down that route. Now, another way in which paid apps can work is if you're developing something that the world has never seen before. So this is an app developed by a guy called Peter Bentley, who's a friend of mine, and he created an app called iStethoscope Pro. Now, what he realized was that the iPhone had superior acoustic hardware than it needed to for a telephone. And this was because it inherited a lot of that hardware, that audio hardware, from the iPod, which, as we all know, the iPhone is built upon. So upon realizing that, he decided to tap into the microphone of the iPhone. And he built an app that allows you to point the phone at your heart or at your lungs and put on some headphones to listen to your heartbeat or your lung sounds. And he didn't actually do very much advertising at all, but he got a massive amount of media attention just because of how innovative this was. This was a way of turning your phone into potentially a medical device. And in fact, having used it for a while, I can say that using iStethoscope Pro app with the iPhone is almost as good as some of the £300, £400 electronic stethoscopes that are out there on the market. And in addition to that, you can also record your heart sounds or your lung sounds and send it to your doctor by email, for example, which is a huge boon. And I think they're currently building some sort of research project where they're collecting a lot of people's heart and lung sounds for research purposes, which is really cool as well. But essentially, when this app came out, it was priced at, I think, 99 cents, which at the time was the lowest price tier. He got a massive amount of traction and a massive amount of revenue from this. And I think just from the revenue from this one app alone, I think he bought a 5-bedroom house somewhere in London, which is incredible. So if you're building something that's really unique, and I mean it really unique, it's not just, some variation of something that already exists, that has a huge amount of value for people, something like this, then you are well within your rights to make it a paid app, and you will see revenue from it. Now, the third example is where you have the rights to some sort of intellectual property. So, for example, if you own a question bank for a bar prep course or medical exams, then you are certainly expected to charge for that information. And a lot of people do, and they actually charge quite a lot. So a lot of these bar prep courses or question banks or quizzes actually average something like around £20 to £30. So if you have domain knowledge in something such as law or medicine, and you create a question bank, then this is a really easy way of creating a niche and relatively lucrative app that can be paid up front. Now, one of the things that we always get asked about relating to paid apps is how you should price it. And what we've noticed through the years is that pricing apps on the App Store is a very delicate matter. People's psychology is very funny about pricing. What you find is that if you have an app that is, maybe a single-use app or maybe entertains people for 30 minutes, then you can charge anywhere less than $199, and people will be fine with that. People are okay with the idea of spending, the equivalent of a cup of coffee on an app. And even if it's not the most amazing app in the world, they're happy with paying that amount just for a bit of novelty, a bit of discovery. But once you hit the $199 threshold and you go above it, people get really angry in the review section if your app is not something spectacular. And there's actually a website that collects a bunch of apps that are priced relatively ridiculously. So, for example, the Professional Chef app, that's $50, or the Water Globe, that's $220. So what we tend to recommend is, start off low and see how people are responding to your app, if they're liking it. And then as you add more features and as you have more positive reviews, if you feel like the app is undervalued, then you can raise it by $1 at a time and see how people respond to it. And you eventually reach an equilibrium where people feel like they're getting enough value for what they're paying, and you feel like your app is being bought at the right price. So play around with pricing is what we're trying to say.